Top of the morning, y'all. Thank God it's finally spring. It's been colder than penguin balls out here. Do penguins actually have balls? Somebody look that up for me. This is what happens when you get started off with ADD. I want to go ahead and mention our sponsors, Backyard Butchers, because I love these guys. This is the true farm-to-table experience. And look, grocery stores say that it's a product of America, but it's not. It's just packaged in America. This stuff right here comes with no mystery meat, no hormones, no antibiotics or steroids, and it's just awesome. So I always say I try to consume double the meat every single sitting, even though I don't have to. That way I make sure a vegan out there isn't making a difference. Backyardbutchers.com/buddy. You're gonna get 20% off your order, and I'll put the link right down below. So Trump actually did it, y'all. He froze federal funding to the state of Maine. It's a little bit of a start. It's not as much as I want, but it's something. I feel like it's gonna be really, really exciting. The governor of Maine, who I know y'all know about already, I'm sure she owns at least 4 Subarus. Is saying that she is not going to comply whatsoever with federal law. In the blowout argument that went viral a few weeks ago, y'all remember about Trump saying, you're not going to allow trans athletes to abuse these women anymore, and she goes, yes, I will, and then it's a whole big fight. So I'm just going to put this out there. Nobody has ever seen Janet Mills, the governor of Maine, and Austin Powers in the same room together. I know it's none of my business, but nobody's ever seen them in the same room together. This is amazing, not just for the state of Maine, but for America. Maine is an anti-woman state, y'all. And up in Maine, they believe that you can physically abuse women, and that's totally fine. And they can have men just crushing women in sports, that's totally fine. In Maine, they believe that you can psychologically abuse little girls by having a 7th grade girl walk in the locker room and see a penis. Now, we all in real America know that's wrong. She knew it's wrong, and then Maine just thinks this is absolutely normal behavior. So there needs to be a slow, painful push against all the powers that be, starting with Janet Mills, to fix this situation. You know, I was telling a buddy of mine yesterday, if this was a weak Republican president like W. Bush, this would just be all talk. He'd probably threaten this kind of thing, but he'd never actually do it. We ain't dealing with W. Bush. We ain't dealing with Clinton. We ain't dealing with Obama. We're dealing with Trump. And when he threatens something, there's a pretty dadgum good chance he's gonna end up doing it. And you know what I say to that? I say this is what we voted for. Y'all know what's so funny? Democrats claim that Trump's a dictator whose rules are through, executive orders. But here we have Janet Subaru Mills up there in Maine, ignoring more than 2/3 of her residents of her own state. And now everybody up there is going to be suffering because she wants to virtue signal something that's insane and immoral. She's risking literally everything on an issue that's been proven to belong to the mentally ill. Y'all, this governor reminds me of every single social studies teacher I ever had who was too hungover to teach social studies, so she wheeled out the little TV cart. Y'all remember this TV cart right here? You know your teacher was hungover when that thing came out. But let's not stop with Maine. We got Massachusetts, New York, Illinois, New Mexico, Colorado. The entire freaking left coast is sitting there waiting in line saying, you won't do nothing. But guess what? I bet he will. And I also want to add that there should be no what they call retro funding. Funding, when Maine finally comes to their senses, funding begins day 1 of compliance. And they wonder why they got the lowest approval rating in history. Why it's like 23% approval for Democrats in Congress. And they're so desperate they're marching Cory Booker out there talking about it's such a big deal. He talked for 20 hours. He talked for 20 straight hours. He talked for 20 straight hours. The freaking homeless guy at my local 7-Eleven does that every single day. Step up your game, Cory. I want to mention there is a map of Maine right here. And this is how it went in 2024. So it's very, very clear that y'all ain't all crazy up there. I mean, 66% of all people from Maine are against transformers competing against girls. And I've actually toured up in Maine. Yeah, this Mississippi boy stepped foot in Maine. Some of the best people I've ever met in my entire life. And it's not their fault that they're ruled by this just communist governor. But they got to be asking themselves, when the people up there in Maine are getting laid off the government jobs, which is going to pick up in the next couple weeks for sure, and they're all screaming at Janet for causing this whole thing, how's that going to go for her? They're going to run her out of town. There ain't no such thing as trans Janet, and there ain't 78 genders either. There's 2 genders and 76 different ways to be gay. That's the fact of it. And I feel sorry for people like this. I mean, it's almost like this woman didn't get asked to dance at the spring formal in 8th grade, and she's taking it out on you and me. And the funniest thing about Trump derangement syndrome is, if the left didn't cheat back in 2020 to begin with, Trump would have already been out of office for 2 months now. Think about that.